And we're live. Good morning from Pasadena. Welcome to our special story time with Anika Aldamuy Denise. She will be reading from her newest book, A Girl Named Rosita, the story of Rita Moreno, actor, singer, dancer, trailblazer, for all of y'all today. She'll also be answering some audience questions, so don't be shy. Please submit some of your questions to the Q&A. Just use the Ask a Question button directly below the viewer screen. Also, please consider supporting our bookstore today by purchasing a copy of Girl Named Rosita. We also have the Spanish edition available, so just click on the green purchase button below and I'll take you to our website where you can complete your purchase. Yeah, there's the cover right there. So let me introduce Anika and then I'll let her read from her book and answer questions. So Anika Aldamuy Denise is an award-winning author who writes stories that tickle her funny bone, tug her heartstrings, feed her curiosity, and celebrate her bicultural Puerto Rican, Italian American heritage. She's the author of 10 picture books, including Love Letter and Planting Stories, The Life of Librarian and Storyteller Pura Belpre. And she's also a mentor for Las Musas and Latin X Pitch. So I'm going to give the screen over to Anika and she will take things from here. Enjoy the event, everyone.
Thank you, Rira, and thank you, Romans, for having me. Good morning, Pasadena. I'm so excited. I don't usually get to travel to Pasadena. So I'm so happy that we can do it virtually today and have some fun at story time. We may even do a little singing and dancing because the subject of my new book is Rita Moreno, a famous, iconic performer, Puerto Rican performer. I love writing about powerhouse Latinas, and this is my newest book in that wheelhouse, I guess. So I'm going to just start reading. I'm going to share my screen so you all can see the beautiful illustrations of Leo Espinosa, another award-winning illustrator who I collaborated with on this book. And I think he did an absolutely beautiful job bringing Rita's story to life. You can see on the cover is her iconic West Side Story dress, the iconic dress that she wore in the film, which she won many awards for. So without further ado, I'm going to begin. And I also want to say thank you to HarperCollins for providing the book and letting us read this story today. Okay. So share screen, clicking. Bear with me for 1 second, and here we go. A Girl Named Rosita. The story of Rita Moreno, actor, singer, dancer, trailblazer. Juncos, Puerto Rico, 1935. In a tiny cottage, tucked between El Yunque Peak and a wild, fragrant rainforest, lives a girl. A girl with the rhythm of the rainforest in her feet and the sweetness of the sugarcane fields in her swishing skirts. A girl named Rosita Dolores Alvarillo, who loves to sing and dance for anyone who'll watch her. Step, turn, snap, kick, swish, jump, twirl. Until early one morning, Mommy whispers, "We are moving to the mainland." "But why isn't Francisco coming?" asks Rosita. "He will come later," says Mommy. "I am taking you first because you are a big girl and you won't cry." So Rosita does not cry as she waves goodbye to her baby brother. In the dark, cramped cabins of the crowded passenger ship, Rosita is quiet and brave. After days of wobbly decks and stormy seas, a statue of a woman wearing a crown rises up to greet them. "Where are the trees and flowers?" asks Rosita. "They will be back in summer," Mommy explains. That night, Rosita dreams she is back in the tiny cottage with Francisco. When she wakes, she does the one thing Mommy thought she wouldn't. She cries. Rosita's new school is a fortress of brick where children tease her for her accent, darker skin, and curly hair. Corre, she tells herself each day on her way home from school. Run so the bullies don't catch you. Out of the cold and away from the noise, she returns to a home that isn't home. When is Francisco coming? Rosita asks. Ay, hija, says Mommy. Pronto, pronto. If only she knew more English, she could tell the bullies. Déjenme en paz. Leave me alone. So while Mommy scrubs and scours and sweats and sews, Rosita practices Inglés in secret. Is leaving behind her native Spanish like letting go of her native island and all the things she loves? Fields, flowers, Francisco. Rosita stops asking, when is Francisco coming? Her heart tells her he will stay in Juncos with Papi and Abuelo, and she will stay in America, where she must learn to speak Inglés. Day after day, she practices until she can speak Inglés perfectly. I am Rosita. I am 5 years old. Just as Mommy promised, the leaves return in summer, bringing color to the concrete city. Tiny glimpses that feel like hope. Rosita smiles again and dances. At 6 years old, Rosita begins dance classes. Paco Cancino is famous, Mommy tells her. He is the tío and teacher of Rita Hayworth, the movie star. Dancing the Sevillanas, Rosita is a bird rising above the rooftops, speaking a language that is all hers. Forward, forward, back, back, kick, pasada, right swing, back, side, hold, ole. After 3 long years of lessons, Paco Cancino pronounces her ready to perform on a real stage. The music begins. Strum, strum, strum. Rosita takes a breath. Clap, clap, clap. On stage, she is home. Soon, Rosita is dancing for the troops, acting on the radio, and recording Spanish versions of hit Hollywood movies. Why not me? Thinks Rosita, seeing the studio starlet sparkle on the screen. I can be a leading lady too. When Rosita is 16, Mommy marries Eddie Moreno, and Rosita decides she will take his name. She chooses the last name Moreno, not because she loves Eddie like a father. Mostly he seems like a stranger, but because it's easier for American casting directors to pronounce. And Rosita is ready to be a star. Then a miracle happens. Louis B. Mayer, the head of MGM Film Studios, wants to meet her. Her palms are sweating as she shakes the hand of the man who can change her life. Sign her, Mr. Mayer says with one look at Rosita. Rosita Dolores Adario Moreno is on her way to Hollywood. In Hollywood, Rosita's name changes again. This time, the movie studio chooses. Ruby Fontino? Marcy Miranda? Orchid Montenegro? Please, she prays, anything but Orchid. I've got it, says the casting director. How about Rita, after Rita Hayworth? From that day forward, Rita Moreno she will be. Rita Moreno is ready for Hollywood, but Hollywood isn't ready for Rita Moreno. After years after teaching herself to speak perfect English, she must fake an all-purpose accent to play maidens, slaves, and Spanish Spitfires, the only roles Hollywood will give to a Latina. Some days she wants to quit, but she's come too far to give up. One day she will play an authentic character who is bold, proud, strong. In 1959, the newspapers announced that Hollywood is making West Side Story, the hit Broadway musical, into a movie. This film, this part is everything Rita's been waiting for. She auditions for Anika, a proud Puerto Rican female lead. For a month, she practices step, turn, snap, kick, swish, jump, twirl. When the test cameras roll, she is Rosita again, back in the concrete city. Corre, run, out of the schoolyard, past the bullies in the streets. Tears, anger, fear, and scene. Jaws drop at Rita's emotional performance. Then, cue the music, horns, strings, percussion. Step, turn, snap, kick, swish, jump, twirl. The role is hers. Rita is Anita, bold, proud, strong. New York City, 1962. In barrios throughout the city, Puerto Ricans gather around their television sets to watch the 34th Academy Awards. No Puertorriqueña or any Latina has ever won an Oscar. A sacred silence descends. A collective breath is held. Who will take home the award? May I have the envelope, please? Rita Moreno in West Side Story. She won, she won, she did it, her fans cry. I can't believe it, says a stunned Rita, clutching her golden statue. With the pride of her people on her shoulders, Rosita Dolores Avarillo from Juncos has made history. And that is the end. I have a timeline here, which is most of her, a lot of her more famous or well-known films, or her most famous and well-known moments where she's won awards. And I lay that all out. And I also wanted to include a timeline and her different films because a lot of these, Rita has been very honest about being so grateful for the opportunities, but there were some flaws in the way that the people she was portraying were characterized and stereotyped, and there was a lot of inaccuracy. So I think it's important to understand how eventually she said, no, I'm not going to play those roles anymore. And she actually stepped out of film for years and waited until she was offered a role that wasn't stereotyped. And she did that in 1969 with The Night of the Following Day. And then, of course, we have some of her iconic moments in public television, which some listeners, watchers out there might remember her in The Electric Company and The Muppet Show and Sesame Street, which as a child, in addition to watching her in West Side Story, is where I got to know Rita and really become a fan. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And happy to take some questions or talk a little bit more about the journey of writing this book and why I wanted to write about her. So does anyone out there have any questions? Let's see, do I click on these? Rita, how do I see the questions from folks? Are you hopping back in, or?
Yeah, I'm okay. Hopping back in. Would you like me to read the questions, or would you like to read them yourselves?
Where do I find them? I can.
You just click on the Ask a Question button at the bottom of the screen. So do you see them?
Yeah, I see them now. Right. For some reason, when I clicked on that once, it didn't, and now it's popping up.
And folks can submit their own questions by doing the same thing. Just click on the Ask a Question button, and you should be able to ask your question that way.
Oh, these are good questions. When was the first? Well, I'll start with the first one. Is there another historical figure you would like to write about? Yes, and I'm writing about her right now, only it has not been announced yet, so I can't share it, but I will say that it is also another woman. It's a Puerto Rican woman, and she is not in entertainment or I've also written a book called Planting Stories, The Life of Librarian and Storyteller Pura del Bre, and that's this one. And she's not an educator either, so it's a new kind of story for me, and I'm very excited about it, and I hope to be able to share more soon. But other than that, let me think. I'm really interested in a story that would maybe bring to light, and it's not about a specific person, but a story that, for in the nonfiction category, that highlights Puerto Rican history. I don't think enough Latin American history is taught in schools. It's largely been erased from the curriculum, and there's a lot of misunderstanding about our relationship to Puerto Rico. And so a book that covered something like that would be something I'd be really interested in writing, and have made preliminary notes on something like that. Okay, what else? When was the first time you felt represented in a book? You know, being the age that I am, I felt like I grew up without a lot of role models, or I mean, there wasn't a lot of representation when I grew up. I think the first time that I ever remember seeing a kid of color in a picture book was The Snowy Day. And even though this wasn't about Latina, just seeing a non-white child on the pages was something that I felt connected to. And I remember that book being a favorite, and one that I asked just because it's a beautiful story, but I have to believe it was also because I felt some reflection in it. Otherwise, it really wasn't until high school and college that I read books with Latina main characters, like the work of Julia Alvarez, who I still see myself reflected in, even though, she writes from the perspective of a Dominican family. There are so many similarities between Dominicans and Puerto Ricans that some of my earliest and favorite books are written by her. How the Garcia girls lost their accents, is like one of my all-time favorites. Let's see. How was your experience working with the illustrator for the book? Amazing, because Leo is amazing. When we were looking at illustrators for this book, that process happens with my editor and art director. And when we were talking about illustrators, Leo's name was one of the first that we discussed. And it was after, he's won a Pura del Bre illustrator honor, and his work is well known. He did the book Island Born, so we knew his work well. But what was so cool about seeing Leo's work for this was that in his portfolio, he had, of course, this very child-friendly illustrations, but he also had some editorial illustration. He's done work for the New Yorker, and that combination of the sophistication of his New Yorker work and other editorial work with this beautiful child friendliness really made him like the perfect illustrator for this book and the material. So I really felt that we kind of hit the jackpot with getting him on board. And I mean, as you can see, the work is absolutely gorgeous. He did such a good job capturing the spirit and energy and strength, really, of Rita Moreno and Grace. Two of my very favorite spreads in the book. It's hard to, they're all so amazing for different reasons. I mean, I feel like every time I read it, I see something new in the story, and that's really fun. And I think that young readers feel that way too. You can read, that's why picture books are so great. You can read them again and again and see something new every time. But I think the one when I first received color pieces through my editor and art director that really sort of took my breath away was this one. When she's just really finding her voice again and her happiness again. She went through a lot of, it was traumatic, really, leaving her baby brother and going to an absolutely new place with it not not knowing that it was happening. It's sort of one day she just left, and here she is finding her way again. And I love the way, the composition, the color, the way she's so, she's just 5 years old, this little girl, but she's so big in the foreground of this illustration. It's just masterful, you know? And of course, I also love, and everyone else always comments on Leo's spread of what we called, we referred to when we were working on the book as the dancing Ritas. I mean, wow, you know, that just takes your breath away, knocks your socks off. It's so Rita Moreno in every way, in that iconic moment, in that iconic film. So my experience with working with Leo has been a dream. What are some comments that you received from, oh wait, I'm going out of order, so I'll do this one. What was the most surprising fact you learned about Rita? I shouldn't be surprised by this, but when I was doing the research, I was not aware. I figured that after she won the Oscar, right? She's the first Latina to win an Oscar. And this is, you know, one of the, probably the highest, biggest award in Hollywood, right? And I would think that after that, she had the pick of any role that she wanted. That, you know, the world was her oyster, and she had more, I would think that would have given her, as a woman in Hollywood, more power, and it did not. She was still offered subpar, stereotypical roles even after Oscar. And I wonder, would that happen to a man? Would that happen to would that happen as much to people of color back then? I think it shouldn't have surprised me, because I think that's still happening today, that many roles for Latinx performers fall, sadly, you know, into some tropes and stereotypes. And the really great thing is that more on the side of who's making the decisions, right? Directors and producers and studio owners, when that moves into having more representation, then they can tell their own stories. And I feel like publishing echoes that a little bit too. Like, so I felt like, wow, she really had to fight for things longer than she should have. And learning that was kind of a bit shocking, and also a bit not, if you look at, we haven't even gotten there today. But and then just other little fun things about her, that, like, I didn't know that she went on a date with Elvis Presley, who she said was kind of dull. So, you know, her life story is just a sprinkling of Hollywood royalty, in a way, of people that are so ultra famous. And she's included in that, but she tells some great stories about people that she met back then, and her experiences with them. So that was a funny little anecdote of Rita's that I heard. So the serious one and a not so serious one. What are some comments you've received from young readers who have read your book? One of the biggest questions that I get, especially from young readers, is about her leaving behind her brother. They want to know what happened to him. They want to know why. They have a lot of questions about mommy and why she left. And we struggled with that even in creating the book, because, you know, this is the reality of what her mother faced. She was in a relationship that was not a good one, and she needed to get away. And she did not have the means really to support both her children, to take them both with her. That would have been very difficult. You know, in the line where I say mommy scrubs and scours and sweats and sews, that's because she was working 2 jobs as a seamstress in a sweatshop, and also cleaning, which for many Puerto Ricans who arrived at that time, those were the avenues for employment for them. And she had to really, you know, make ends meet that way. It was not an easy thing. And especially when she started having to pay for things like dance lessons, you know, she gave Rita that gift. The flip side of that was having to let go of the dream of bringing Francisco over and having them join them. It's sort of an unanswered question, even for for Rita in her life. She talks about not really knowing everything that was in her mother's heart about that, and she knew it was a difficult, gut-wrenching decision. So young readers have to kind of, understand these big themes. That's a big theme for a picture book, but it's a picture book biography and it's a true story. So we needed to leave that in. We talked about not having that in, but I felt like that would be erasing, an experience of a truly lived experience. So I didn't want to do that. And we just had to present it in a way that kids might kind of get it. We don't completely tie that up, but we do show the moment where Rita has come sort of to an acceptance that this is how it's going to have to be. And then a lot of them want to know if they were ever reunited, and the answer is no, they were not. Which that's the hard and sad part of that story. Other comments I get from readers is, they want to know when I say she was on Sesame Street. They have a lot of questions about that and the Muppet Show because that's something that they recognize. So I tell them, what I do is I play when I'm in school visits. I play for them. Maybe I can play it now. Her very famous line, which those of us who followed Rita throughout her career will remember her role on the Electric Company, where she played the helper, the milk delivery person. And there was this great line. Did I? Yeah. I'll see if you guys can hear it. Hang on. Guys! Oh, wait. We missed it a little bit. Hold on. I have to go back. Hey, you guys! Which always makes me laugh because she's such a petite person, but she's got a voice that could bring down the house, And so that was a line that actually we used to, when we'd walk into, like, my dad would come home from work, and if nobody answered him right away, he'd say, "Hey, you guys." So, yeah. Oh, funny. Okay. Other questions? Do you have any books by other Latinx authors you'd like to recommend? Oh my gosh. Yeah. So many. I think the one book that I love about Puerto Rico, if you're looking for other ones, is Carlos Aponte's Across the Bay. That book came out I think it was a 2019 release. It actually won a Pura Belpré Illustrator honor. It is a stunning book. And for me, it was an emotional book because when I first saw it, my dad is Puerto Rican, and he has really fond memories of being in Puerto Rico in the summer. He grew up in Staten Island, in New York, in Queens. My family's kind of sprinkled through Staten Island, Queens, and the Bronx. And he always spoke about that time with such affection and kind of longing that that when I first saw that book, it reminded me of the first time he brought me to Puerto Rico and how I felt that emotional connection alongside him. I wanted so much to understand and be connected to that part. I'm mixed too. So when you're a mixed person, I think you even more so want to understand both sides. And this part of him was kind of lost to me because I had never traveled with him to Puerto Rico, and he didn't go back as much as he wanted to. And then when we finally did, I felt like, okay, it was really powerful. And something about Carlos's illustrations tapped into that for me, because they're just gorgeous. I should have if I had known about this question, I would have the book and I would hold it up for you. And there's another one called A New Kind of Wild, which is also about something similar, and it's by Zara Gonzalez Huang. And Zara's father had a very similar experience to mine. He actually lived in Puerto Rico for many years, came more as, I believe this is correct, I hope I'm saying this correctly, but came more as a teenager adult and to the United States and to the mainland. And so she told the story of this child who comes in a new kind of wild, who comes from Puerto Rico to New York City and finds connections between those two places. And it's just a beautiful book. It's beautifully written. She's author illustrator. That was another one that really made my heart go thump pitter patter when I saw it. And I thought, wow, these really beautiful books. In middle grade, I want to recommend, I love to recommend books that came out during the pandemic that should have gotten tons of attention, but because it was such a wild time that their releases were quieter, although it's having a steady build now, is A Friend Divided by Ernesto Cisneros. That is the middle grade book by a Latinx author that just stayed with me. It's, you know, those books that make you think about them long after you've finished them and closed them and put them back on the shelf. That's that book for me for this year's releases. It is the story of Efren, who is struggling with his ama being deported and his experiences of that. It's just so beautifully written. It's heartbreaking and sad, but hopeful. And it was a debut. And I mean, it's my pick for winning many awards. And everyone should read it. It's a beautiful and important book by a new voice in Latinx literature, children's literature, who just blew me away. So those are my recommendations. Go out and get those books. Order them from Vroman's. Please support your independent bookstore. I keep saying, and this is like what all of us are saying, November is the new December. So do your holiday shopping early and buy books.
Right, let me jump back on screen. It seems like that was the last question, so I think that is a good place to end the stream. Thank you to everyone who tuned in. It was great having you all here, and thank you, Anika, for reading the book and for gracing us with your presence, and also for answering some questions for us. Again, if you would like to support our bookstore by purchasing a copy of Anika's book, just click on the green purchase button directly below the viewer screen. Again, we do have the Spanish edition of A Girl Named Rosita, so you can also order that from our store. And for those of you who tuned in late, don't worry, we'll have a replay available within maybe like half an hour by using the same stream link. And we'll see if we can get a clip of this event on Instagram as well. So stay tuned for that. And I think that about covers it all. Thank you again, Anika, and stay safe, everyone, and take care. Great. Bye.
Thank you so much for having me. Bye.